Welcome back for another edition of What Does It Mean? With a focus on assessment terms. Admittedly, state testing and things like that are my least favorite part of this job, but I understand why we have to have it, so let's talk about some of these terms when it comes to testing. Parents, at the beginning of the year, and especially around this time of year, you are going to have a lot of assessment terms coming at you. And let's start with diagnostic. You might also hear a diagnostic assessment be referred to as a benchmark assessment. And while they do differ a little, a diagnostic assessment and a benchmark assessment are going to tell you where your child is performing compared to their peers and compared to the standards that they need to master, often referred to as where they are on grade level. This is how us teachers create intervention groups, figure out what kids are struggling with, and close up those gaps. There are a lot of different programs that people use, so when you take a diagnostic test might differ a little bit. In my school district, we take one at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and at the end of the year. It measures their grade level proficiency, but it also shows us their growth. Here's an example of what one of my diagnostic tests looks like. One of my students took this test at the beginning of the year and scored on a third grade level. I can immediately tell that I need to focus more on vocabulary and informational text. And then later in the year, I can start to bring this one up. She took this test again in November. And based on the interventions provided, you could see that vocabulary and comprehensions were brought up, and now we're focusing on this one. Those reports show much more in-depth data than that. For example, what specific things within those ranges that we need to be working on. And when the data is used correctly, they work. Now, the next two types of assessments that you'll hear are formative and summative assessments. A formative assessment generally doesn't count as a grade. There are a lot of different options for a formative assessment, but for example, it might show up at the end of a math lesson as just a way to check your understanding. It could be writing an answer on a sticky note based on a lesson that you just learned. Did you learn what your learning target said that you would for the lesson? Using a formative assessment, I can quickly see who didn't get the gist of the lesson and go back and give some Tier 2 instruction to make sure that they catch up with the rest of the group. A summative assessment usually does go in as a grade. These are usually the tests that are given at the end of a reading unit or a math unit to assess to see how your child performed compared to the standard that they're supposed to have mastered. And finally, the standardized assessment is just that. It is the same exact test with the same exact rules, the same exact script. Everyone has to take the same exact test, and they compare those scores between schools and students to see where they are aligning with each other. I'm not a big fan of those, but that's a video for another day. It's very stressful and there are very high stakes, and a lot of decisions are made based on the state test scores that come back from those. And I don't like to complain, but I will make a video stating why that is the least favorite part of my job. Anyways, I hope this was informative, and if you have any other terms that you need to know about, please let me know for the next What Does It Mean?